Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Robin Dwyer. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories. Hamas says there's a long way to go before a ceasefire deal can be agreed with Israel. Just one step away from famine. The United Nations warns over 500,000 Gazans are in desperate need of food, accusing Israel of blocking aid deliveries. No trains, no ferries. Widespread strikes in Greece coincide with the one-year anniversary of the country's worst-ever rail crash. And a tough test for the French government's plans to enshrine the right to abortion in the Constitution as the Senate votes on the proposal. Hamas says there's still a long way to go to secure a ceasefire with Israel. A Hamas official says President Joe Biden's optimism over a temporary truce does not match reality, insisting the group is showing flexibility in negotiations but is prepared to keep fighting. Israel says it struck 8 significant targets overnight and has reported that 2 more soldiers have been killed. Hamas says it's launched 40 missiles from southern Lebanon at Israeli military targets. Israel says it intercepted a number of launches, with damage reported in its northernmost city of Kiryat Shmona. Later, Israel said it had carried out airstrikes on what it said was a Hezbollah weapons storage and manufacturing site in southern Lebanon. Qatar has accused Israel of deliberately starving the people of Palestine, calling for international pressure to be put on Israeli leaders. The United Nations is warning that over 500,000 Gazans, a quarter of the population, are on the brink of famine, with Israel systematically blocking aid deliveries.
Here we are at the end of February, with at least 576,000 people in Gaza, 1/4 of the population, one step away from famine, with 1 in 6 children under 2 years of age in northern Gaza suffering from acute malnutrition and wasting. And practically the entire population of Gaza are left to rely on woefully inadequate humanitarian food assistance to survive.
Well, let's go to Gaza now and talk to our correspondent, Noor Harazin, who is in Rafah. So, Noor, people perhaps hopeful for a ceasefire before this. What's the mood now?
Well, yes, actually, even though the reality here on the ground and what is happening here on the ground is that the situation is just going from bad to worse. I mean, talking about the humanitarian aid, talking about the continuous Israeli attacks on Gaza. I mean, during the past 24 hours, there were hundreds of Israeli attacks on Gaza. The Palestinian Health Ministry said that 76 people were killed in Gaza over the past 24 hours. And this brings up the death toll here in Gaza since the 7th of October up to 29,954 Palestinians. So regarding that, it is an ongoing war of starvation also, but the Palestinian people here on the ground are hopeful, especially that we are around 10 days away from the holy month of Ramadan, this month where Muslims around the world are known to fast during the day. So Palestinians here on the ground, they are hopeful that maybe this will put some pressure on the Arab and Muslim countries, somehow put more pressure on Israel and also Hamas to accept and to come with this new humanitarian ceasefire where Palestinians on the ground here at least can enjoy some sense of relief during the month of Ramadan.
And there have been repeated warnings from the United Nations about the potential for famine, child malnutrition. How are people there coping with the conditions?
Well, people here on the ground, they just have to live through whatever they are facing. The UN said that around 576,000 Palestinians are actually one step away from a famine. So this is around a quarter of the population of Gaza. It means that 1 out of 4 people here in Gaza are starving. And this is something that we are witnessing here on the ground. filled with very little aid that is being allowed to the Gaza Strip. However, there were these efforts from France, Jordan, also Egypt. Over the past 3 days, they have been dropping food aid on the west coast of Gaza, in northern Gaza, middle Gaza, and southern Gaza. Even though some of these packages actually landed in the sea, but Palestinian fishermen went out after it, and they managed to evacuate some of these packages from the sea. Palestinians are thankful that the Arab countries are putting some energy in assisting and helping the people of Gaza.
Noor, thank you very much. Our correspondent Noor Harazin in Rafah. Well, that's the picture in Gaza. Let's go to Israel now and talk to our correspondent in Tel Aviv, Sarah Coates. So, Sarah, there have been more strikes across the Israeli border with Lebanon.
This tit-for-tat situation on Israel's northern border is only continuing to escalate. Hamas's Lebanese branch is claiming it was behind this latest volley of rockets that were sent over from southern Lebanon into Israel a little earlier today. Apparently, they were aimed at a number of IDF bases, but did get through the Iron Dome missile defense system, a number of those rockets hitting a residential building. Pretty dramatic pictures coming in showing a massive hole in the roof of that residence. In response, the Israeli military has been striking at what it says is a source of fire in Lebanon. We are hearing unconfirmed reports that a mother and her little girl have been killed in those Israeli strikes in Lebanon. And with both of these sides, Hezbollah and Israel, saying that they do not want war time and time again, it certainly appears as though this may be getting closer, especially given the pressure that's being put on the Israeli government to restore the security situation on that northern border and get these 80,000 or so displaced people, internally displaced Israelis, home.
Well, let's talk then, Sarah, about these ceasefire proposals. We've heard from Hamas there's a long way to go before an agreement on a ceasefire. What's the latest from the Israeli side?
We do know that the Israeli Security Cabinet is set to meet tomorrow night to discuss this draft proposal. We've also heard from the Israeli government spokesperson Tal Heinrich. She said there will be no deal unless Hamas drops its outlandish demands. So certainly appears that potentially one of the main sticking points is the same as we have been seeing time and time again. And this is the end of the war. Hamas has been saying that it wants nothing else than a permanent ceasefire immediately. Israel says that this will not happen, that it will carry out this operation in Rafah, whether there's a deal or not. And it comes as there is pressure on the Netanyahu government right now. There are around 70 or so family members of these captives in the Strip. They are marching all the way from the Gaza border to Jerusalem over the next few days, demanding Netanyahu do a deal right now to get these people out.
Sarah, thank you very much. Our correspondent Sarah Coates in Tel Aviv. The conflict in Gaza has had a significant impact on Tuesday's Michigan Democratic U.S. presidential primary. President Biden won the primary despite thousands of protesting voters registering their ballot as uncommitted. At the halfway mark of vote counting, nearly 60,000 Democrats had used their votes to voice their anger over Biden's support for Israel's offensive in Gaza. A spokeswoman for the late Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny says his funeral will be held in Moscow on Friday. She said there would be a ceremony at a church, followed by a cemetery burial. Navalny, who was a vocal critic of President Putin, died suddenly 12 days ago in an Arctic penal colony. A court in southern Russia has jailed a Ukrainian man for 11.5 years after convicting him of espionage. Russia's security service says 57-year-old Sergei Krivitsky tried to buy secret missile components and smuggle them to Ukraine. The court did not say whether he pleaded guilty or not. A nationwide strike in Greece has disrupted public transport and brought the ports near Athens to a standstill. Workers from across public and private sectors are protesting in Athens over wages and conditions. Well, let's talk to our correspondent Evangelos Tsipsas, who's in the Greek capital. So, Evangelo, have there been a big turnout at these strikes and demonstrations?
Well, things right now quiet. The roads have opened, but there are a lot of riot police officers still stationed in every corner because just a few moments ago there was deployment of tear gas and stun grenades from them. There was some sort of clashes that took place here in the center of Athens. But we're talking about a large demonstration. It was a 24-hour strike, but it also happened to be at the same day of the one-year anniversary of the train crash that took place in central Greece, where 57 people lost their lives. So it was quite a large turnout. A lot of organizations, student organizations, a lot of health workers, a lot of people from the public sector were out here protesting, every single person for their own demand. But they all came under one banner, this one big black banner that on top of it, it read pretty much reading saying that we want justice and we want it now. And they're referring to the case of those 57 people who lost their lives in the train crash. The police are saying about 20,000 people were out here today, and most of those were actually coming together for that anniversary, for the anniversary of those people who lost their lives. And a lot of the students that we spoke to were pretty much angry, and they said, we want justice. Let's have a listen.
We remember this event every day. We feel pain, sadness and anger. That's why we are here today. We need to remember what happened, and we need to fight for justice to be served so it won't happen again.
We feel anger. We feel this way because the train crash was a crime and not just an accident. A crime caused by the government and their policies of privatizing and our country's organizations.
Inflation and product prices are increasing at a much faster rate than our salaries. Today, to speak, our salaries are very low. We haven't seen an increase in over 14 years.
And that was pretty much the vibe of what was going on in the protest. On the one hand side, you had thousands of students who were protesting against the privatization of universities, which is expected to be brought to Parliament and voted sometime in the beginning of March. Then on the other hand, a number of students that are out here protesting, demanding justice for those who lost their lives. As they say, it wasn't just an accident, it was a crime. And then on the other hand, you had thousands of people working in the public sector who demand higher salaries that haven't been increased since the decade-long financial crisis, and are saying right now that the money that they're receiving is not enough to counter inflation and the high prices of products. Now, we have to also remind here that Greece is among the lowest of the monthly salaries of those of the European Union countries. And those who out here today say that they're going to continue to come out in numbers to be able to pressure the government to receive what they want to receive, which is higher salaries.
Evangelo, thank you very much. Our correspondent Evangelo Sipsas in Athens. You're watching CGTN. Still ahead. France's move to make abortion a guaranteed freedom in the Constitution faces a tough test. We're in Paris next.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
I think it should be more global cooperation.
I would like to hear more the voice of the developing countries.
Globalization has lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
The green transition has to happen. It's a necessity.
For China and the United States are important powers in the world.
What unites us is much more than what divides us.
And I believe China is committed to this agenda.
Join me, Juliet Mann, to set the agenda at these times every weekend on CGTN.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
One more offensive in a long line of battles that's been ongoing for more.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots. Excuse us.
The world today matters for your world tomorrow.
The number of casualties is growing quickly.
Why, this is one of the hardest hit towns in the region.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
Welcome back. A reminder of our headlines. Hamas says there's a long way to go before a ceasefire deal can be agreed with Israel. Just one step away from famine. The United Nations warns over 500,000 Gazans are in desperate need of food, accusing Israel of blocking aid deliveries. And no trains, no ferries. Widespread strikes in Greece coincide with the one-year anniversary of the country's worst ever rail crash. The French government's plan to enshrine the right to an abortion into the constitution will face a tough test in the Senate later, where it's due to be voted on. Well, let's talk to our correspondent, Tony Waterman in Paris. So, Tony, the fate of this bill hanging in the balance in the Senate.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Unlike the lower house, the National Assembly, where this bill passed with overwhelming support, it is likely to face challenges in the far-right majority Senate. That being said, one major hurdle has already been cleared earlier today. The Senate Law Committee rejected all proposed amendments to this bill. If those modifications, some of them as small as a single word in the text, if they had been upheld, that would mean that it would have to go back to the National Assembly, which would have delayed this progress. So what we are waiting on now is this vote, which we expect to take place in as soon as 90 minutes from now. It's uncertain how it's going to go, and partly because 3 of the Senate majority leaders are opposed to it. Critics say that it is there's more important things to be discussing right now, and that in their estimation, abortion is not under threat in France at the moment. Women have had access to abortion since 1975, but there are many lawmakers, many citizens, and many women in particular that just don't want to risk it at this point.
So with all that in mind, why is France now moving to enshrine abortion as a constitutional right?
You know, it wasn't something that was widely talked about before 2022. That, of course, was the year that the U.S. Supreme Court reversed Roe versus Wade, so undermining 50 years of precedent when it came to abortion access in the United States. And now you are left with tens of millions of women in the U.S. that have absolutely no access to this procedure, even when it comes down to medical emergency. So there is very much this thought that if they wait until abortion is visibly under threat, that it would be too late to reverse things. There's also been, not just in France, but across Europe right now, a rise in conservatism. The far right is expected to pick up a number of seats in the June parliamentary elections. So again, there is this fear of wanting to protect this right, make sure that it cannot be taken away from women before it is too late. This is a bill that is going to guarantee the freedom to terminate a pregnancy. If it is passed in the Senate here behind me later today, then it is going to go to a special congressional hearing. That is going to be held next week, potentially, at Versailles Palace, where we're going to need to see 3/5 of all lawmakers voting in favor of it for this constitutional amendment to be carried through.
Tony, thank you very much. Our correspondent Tony Waterman in Paris. Senators in the U.S. state of Alabama have filed bills to protect in vitro fertilization services. The bills aim to give immunity from civil and criminal liability to providers in the industry. It comes after the state's top court ruled earlier this month that frozen embryos have the same rights as children, causing some IVF clinics to stop treatment. South Korea's fertility rate, already the world's lowest, continued its dramatic decline in 2023, falling to a record low of 0.72 children per woman from 0.78 in 2022. That's far below the rate of 2.1 needed to maintain a steady population. Women in South Korea are concerned about their careers and the financial cost of raising children. Many have decided to delay childbirth or to not have babies. The Chinese city of Xi'an is offering newlyweds the chance to win a financial prize in a bid to encourage more weddings and more births. The couples will be given lottery tickets once they present their marriage certificates. China's population fell again in 2023. Birth and marriage rates have also seen steady declines. The campaign will run until the end of November. A disaster declaration has been announced across 60 counties in the U.S. state of Texas after sweeping wildfires. A nuclear weapons plant had to shut down as out-of-control fires came within range of the facility. Evacuation orders were issued for several towns to support firefighters. Unseasonable hot and dry conditions, along with strong winds, have helped the wildfires spread. In the past 2 months, San Diego and Southern California has been hit by extreme weather, bringing unprecedented amounts of rain. Now the area is preparing for more severe storms. Our correspondent Francis Kuo reports.
The weather in San Diego is famously flawless, with a reputation for climate constants.
It's still nice that there's no wind.
The sunny skies are what drew resident Shaylee Heller to the city. But over the past 6 months, America's finest city got a wake-up call. This month alone, not 1 but 2 rounds of atmospheric rivers pounded San Diego and other parts of California. These fire hoses of moisture unleashing torrential rain and fierce winds. A month earlier, an unexpected and ferocious storm dumped nearly 7 centimeters of rain on the city, its rainiest day ever in January since 1850. The torrent once again catching residents and forecasters completely off guard. The biggest weather surprise of them all came last August, when a tropical storm made a direct hit on San Diego County, the first time since 1939.
We had massive king tides. The tide was actually coming up onto the boardwalk and washing sand, seaweed, all these things onto the boardwalk that I had never seen before.
It is a rare event.
The historic moment was no surprise to UC San Diego climate science professor Shangping Xie. In the past, the area's moderate water temperatures would prevent storms from gaining strength. But with temperatures warming year by year, Xie says storms like Hillary will be more common.
Winter storms are going to become more kind of intense in terms of rainfall.
Professor Xie's office at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography overlooks the Pacific Ocean, a constant reminder of the urgency of his research.
The changes we are experiencing, we are witness happening at a rate, unprecedented rate. So in lifetime, basically, or even shorter than lifetime. So the coastal communities in California are facing difficult choices.
Heller leads eco-tours on these crucial and vulnerable waterways that serve as a natural barrier to storms. She works with the organization Ocean Connectors, which supports and raises awareness about ocean conservation along the Pacific coast.
The last thing I always say after an eco-tour is like, I hope you really take something away from this that is either like an actionable change or even just learning something that you tell somebody else, because I think the collective action will definitely make an impact in the end. There's still time, there's still hope.
Francis Kuo, CGTN, San Diego.
Now, it's a natural resource that fights pollution and could help vegetation grow, something widely available but often overlooked. As our correspondent Mark New reports, this very useful material grows right out of our own heads.
Okay, here we go.
Lisa Gauthier is opening her mail to find it full of valuable donations that her charity group needs.
Hair is amazing. It's protecting your eyes, like eyelashes, eyebrows, and your facial hair. It's protecting your nose and your mouth and your ears. It's also regulating your temperature, right? So it stands up and traps hot air when you're cold in it, and it collects moisture from your sweat when you're hot.
Gauthier says Matter of Trust was the very first charity to take human hair donations to do this. Jaden Wynn expertly separates and spreads out the hair, then runs it through a felting machine. She creates 2 scrims that essentially sandwich another layer of hair filler, forming a mat.
Amazing with this. You get a real sense of how to manipulate the hair, just like a hairstylist would.
They do use animal hair donations too. And the mats produced perform critical functions used around the world in oil spills, drains, and filtration systems.
Hair soaks up between 2 and 9 times its weight in oil. And so just that alone is interesting for like use in major oil spills, but also like storm drains, where 50% of the oil that gets into our waterways, it goes through storm drains.
Matter of Trust has 108 global partner hubs in 41 countries. Some are located at alpaca farms, others at wig maker shops, and some like their headquarters together with hair salons. It allows for immediate donations, so here goes.
Medium length and long hair is much better for the mats, but short hair like mine may have a calling too. At San Francisco's famous Presidio National Park, an experiment is underway, testing chemical fertilizer versus compost versus hair to help grow the lawn.
All of this was barren. There was just absolutely no green, all just dirt. And as you can see, the hair is doing pretty well.
It's only been a few weeks, but as we compare plots, it appears that hair is winning.
The water goes through the hair because it's hydrophobic, so you don't need to irrigate the fog and the rain going through the hair into the soil, but the hair is like a protective against the sun and the wind.
Back at Matter of Trust headquarters, we also get to see an oyster shell bag made from hair. Yet one more way they're making sure a renewable resource does not fall to waste. Mark New, CGTN, San Francisco.
The headlines again. Hamas says there's a long way to go before a ceasefire deal can be agreed with Israel. Just one step away from famine. The United Nations warns over 500,000 Gazans are in desperate need of food, accusing Israel of blocking aid deliveries. And no trains, no ferries. Widespread strikes in Greece coincide with the one-year anniversary of the country's worst ever rail crash. And that is the world today. Thanks for watching. There's more news on CGTN Europe's channel on the Telegram app, or scan the QR code on the screen to get stories and updates sent direct to your phone. We're back with more news at the top of the hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.
Hello and welcome to Europe's weather forecast. Let's see what will happen for the next 2 days. Thursday, you could notice light rain building up across parts of Iberia Peninsula, stretching upward, and also in parts of Poland into Belarus. Scandinavia into northwestern Russia could expect snowy weather. Then getting to Friday, you could notice rainfall will cover more and more places. For example, from Iberia Peninsula stretching all the way up to parts of Scandinavia. Also in southern portion like Italian Peninsula and parts of the Balkans, and that is mostly because of the low vortex. At the same time, the snowy weather could continue to occur in parts of Russia and portions of Finland. Speaking of maximum temperatures, if you're living in Central Europe, you could feel significant rise in temperatures as we get into Friday, so please dress up accordingly. And your business and travel outlook: by Friday, you could have rain for Brussels 12 to 4, 15 to 4 for Berlin, overcast sky. Moving to Warsaw 16 to 6 with a chance of light rain, down to Vienna 12 to 4 light rainfall. Back to Western Europe, London, Paris, you could expect rain chances with daily highs in lower teens. And that's it for now. Stay tuned for more city forecast.